Hey everyone, welcome back to SaaS Talks from Lead to Close. I have another special guest, Aditya. I want to say your last name, but I'm always gonna butcher. So help me pronounce your last name.
You nailed it, actually. It's much better than many other people. So you get 100 points.
Yeah. He's the founder and CEO of Avoma. It's the call recording and intelligence meeting assistant software. For those of you that think of Gong, think of this also because it's a competitor, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And so I'm glad to have you on board. And I'm excited about this topic because I think a lot of salespeople and VPs and founder-led sales are selling some sort of product that they may feel or their prospect may feel sort of commoditized. And so like how do you differentiate yourself against the competition? And so prior to this recording, you had mentioned that you have like a framework that you want to sort of share first, and then we'll get tactical. So let's start there. Let's start around the framework.
Yeah, I mean, I can look. You obviously brought the elephant in the room. So we do compete with Gong, but typically I like to say people Gong, but better. But that's not what people want to hear. So, and it's not also just, well, how are we better? And it's also not necessarily better is always the right thing. How are we different in what areas? So a lot of the times, and this might be helpful for your audience, rather than getting tactical, how are we different and pitching Avoma, I don't want to pitch Avoma too much. What I thought that what you asked me this question, Aditya, in this crowded market, how do you differentiate yourself? And this is the question I told you that I think about it every single day. And not just you have to think about this just one time. The most important thing that people have to think about it, this is with the way how the world is evolving, with the innovation is happening, the market consolidation happening, incumbents, new players, new competitors constantly coming in. So you're thinking about this problem pretty much all the time, strategizing it, aligning the team, continuing giving this messaging to the internal team so that they are equipped, because the coaching and onboarding happens once when you hire new reps. You have some story, this is how we're different, but they get started selling, and within like few weeks, there's new competitor. Now you have to tell how are we different than them.
Hmm.
So this topic is very near and dear to my heart. And I wanted to, the way how we think about internally, I think about this problem. There's a framework I follow. And there are three essentially layers of these three frameworks. At the bottom layer, it starts with the market. Then the next layer, it starts with the product layer. And then a layer on top of that is a go-to-market motion. And I'll go deeper into each one of these things. And when you think about the differentiation, you have to be really good at one thing minimum. That's the table stake. The best is you do really good at two different things. So you either are differentiated in the marketing messaging, the which market that you're focusing on, and you also have very strong product differentiation also. So when if you're a salesperson or a founder, you're thinking about having this conversation, you should be able to explain this argument to your customers, to your prospect, or to your investor with this particular lens. Now, let me go into details. So when I think about market, again, market is obviously there are multiple ways of thinking about it. One is I typically look at it segment, which segment within that market that you're trying to focus on. It could be SMB, it could be mid market, it could be enterprise. So you have to identify where your strengths are, where you want to play your based on your experience, the team that you have. Focus on that, and then also look at where the competitors are. And so where are the gaps in that market, which market is underserved. So you can also take that strategic approach in your competitive differentiation. So market segment is one. The other is market industry. And this typically goes to when we think about, you mentioned call recording and intelligence. Now, there are multiple ways, industries that could find this valuable. There are companies like contact centers, so support industry. This is where historically people used to record calls for coaching and training purposes. You could have sales and customer success teams. Now you can think about this use case for recruiting, or even medical professional and doctors and that profession also. So you have to pick your battle where, again, this goes back to where your strengths are, where you have a strong point of view, where you have unique point of view that you think that this is how this industry, the way needs to be solved based on your experience or observations or research, you can take that approach as well. So I typically like to, again, see where competitors are. And when we were starting Avoma, you mentioned Gong. Gong and Chorus were already very well funded. They were ahead of time at that time. So every single investor where I was pitching this, they were like, oh, can you do this for recruiting? Can you go do Gong for support and all of that stuff? So investors like to think from that lens perspective as well, like the market leader or some other industry. But again, to be honest, I was not coming from medical professional background. I didn't have a strong interest in solving problem for that vertical. And I felt that even in this, we wanted to focus on knowledge professionals, which are customer facing knowledge professionals. So that meant salespeople, customer success people, sometimes it's your professional services people, where the emphasis is not about helping people to coach for the sales coaching and training, but also capturing information what your clients are saying, your prospects are saying. And that's how a differentiation we believe that we had early on. So that use case clarity would help you to say no to which investors, no to which prospects. We have a lot of prospects come in and say, well, especially it happened in pandemic where schools and everything was remote. A lot of universities started coming in and, hey, we need this for our kind of universities and schools and educations. And we were very clear to say no to those opportunities because we had clear understanding that we are solving this problem for client-facing knowledge professionals, not for students, not for teachers and all of that stuff. But some other competitors in our space went and grabbed that opportunity. So kudos to them. So again, you have to pick your battle and you have to decide. So that's how I will talk about the market kind of differentiation. I'll get into product and go-to-market motion. I just want to pause here before I get into any thoughts you have here.
So one of the first things you're saying when we'll use an individual contributor, they're on a call with someone that's evaluating their product against another product. A common one is like ZoomInfo versus Apollo. Let's just
Apollo,
say.
yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
They all have, or Seamless. They all have pretty much the same functionality. So you're saying, but for Apollo and ZoomInfo and all of those other ones, they all essentially do the same. They're all in the same market for the same ICB. They all do the same thing. So, then I think the market segmentation becomes a little bit more difficult because it's in that case sort of a commodity.
Well, yes or no. And this is where the go-to-market motion and the product differentiation also comes in. And I'll take even ZoomInfo and Apollo, great example. I'll bring that. Or I can also talk about Avoma versus Gong also, and we can also talk about that. But even if you take that example, ZoomInfo and Apollo, I would argue that there's a very clear differentiation from the market. While the functionality is same, but ZoomInfo focuses more on the enterprise segment and mid-market to enterprise segment mostly. Yes, there will some SMBs will buy it. But if you look at it, SMBs probably prefer more Apollo because the pricing, the way they've done it in terms of monthly pricing, it's not an annual contract. The ticket size of the pricing itself also helps. So because Apollo choose to go after SMB market, that's what the differentiation. So Apollo was very clear from day one to not go after ZoomInfo customers from day one. Right? Now they're mature. They've been in business for 5-10 years. Now you would see they would be competing with ZoomInfo more and more in enterprise or even mid-market. But when they started, that was the differentiation they started with.
Yeah, but that's also a problem. If your only competitive edge is the price, I mean, and that tends to happen very early on. Like when a restaurant opens up, they usually have the lowest prices until they get traffic, and now they get greedy. In my opinion, I don't think price is a strong enough differentiation
It's not.
because then you just get another company pops up and then offers half the price
lower than happens all the time. And this is excellent part. And this is where the second tier comes. That's what I said. Only this market segmentation necessary is not important. And then you have to layer in another layer, which is the product differentiation. Now, typically product differentiation, you can think about the two strategies I use. One is either it's the bundling versus unbundling strategy. So what's this approach you're going to take? A lot of the times what happens is some companies will say, well, I'm going to go and find this large product that some other big incumbent has, that this one feature or one function is really poor. And I'm going to pick that and build the best of the breed solution and go deep. And so you're unbundling that solution and you're building the feature-centric kind of an approach. And I will take an example. Chili Piper is a great example there. Scheduler, a lot of people had scheduler product, but Chili Piper did really well. These addressing these use cases that some of the other advanced scheduling tools did not have it at that time. And they said, oh, these workflows are still broken. I'm going to build great business just focusing on that. But you can also think about the bundling strategy from day one. You can say, hey, look, this is disjointed tools. It's a broken experience, and I'm going to combine these two tools into one. You mentioned Apollo. Apollo is a great example. They said historically outreach and sales lot were focusing only on sales engagement, like sequences, email sequences, and ZoomInfo was Lucia and some other providers were on data providers. Apollo said that's a broken experience. Every single person who needs to send email, you need data. Why not combine them together? So they bundled that approach. So what Apollo did, not only they went after SMB market, they also realized the pain for the SMB market. SMB market don't have a lot of resources. Your ops people, more resources to buy these expensive tools and have more people to go and combine these tools. They want simplified tool. They want all-in-one tool. So that's what the approach. So pricing was one thing, but then Apollo also said, I'm going to be differentiated compared to ZoomInfo based on this. Hey, you don't only buy the data, but you don't now need to buy Outreach and SalesLog, and you simply buy Apollo's
Yeah.
sales engagement, and we provide that seamless experience.
I mean, so I'll give you two other examples. Milkshake, for example, I consulted for them, and they combined email warm-up with Milkshake, and so now you get those two. Lead IQ, for example, is call it like an Apollo, but I don't think yet I don't know.
Only data.
Yeah, they're only data.
Do data. Yeah.
And so it's like when I was thinking of evaluating Lead IQ, I'm like, that's so annoying. I have to use two different tools.
Correct. Exactly.
But then you have a lot of companies that, yeah, we're an all-in-one system. Yeah, so is this company. They're also, if you look at legal tech, there's plenty of all-in-ones. So then you start becoming a commodity again.
Yeah, and now this is where even in the product, now I'll have the second lever that comes in. What kind of system are you building? So typically when I think about product there, you have to decide which approach are you going to take, bundling versus unbundling, and then what kind of system you're building. And so when I say system, there's this three very common system that typically people talk about. One is system of record, one is system of engagement or workflow, and one is system of intelligence. Some companies would say, this whole CRM thing. There are companies like Close and HubSpot and all of that. They said, we're going to compete with HubSpot by building the system of record. Or compete with Salesforce. And so that's how they build that system of record as your primary thing. But that's not enough. And so then you see the system of engagements are the tools like Outreach, Apollo, even Zoom to some extent. You're doing a video as an engagement. That's a system of engagement. So you decide where you want to play, and so make it part of people's daily workflow. And then the other tools are system of intelligence. So companies like you mentioned, Gong, there are some other revenue intelligence tool like Clary or People.ai. These companies started at the intelligence layer. Like, well, you're doing all these activities, but you're not able to make sense of what activity typically means. And so we will help you give the insights from the system of intelligence point of view. So you can also decide what is the layer of thing that you're going to do. Now, when Outreach started, they started as a system of intelligence. Now, with the market's needs, they saw, well, there is a system of intelligence is also what people are buying. So now to differentiate between Outreach's competitor, they said, now I'm going to provide a system of intelligence to you also. So another advanced functionality so that you don't have to continue to go and buy. But now to your question that, well, so everyone is doing all in one, you have to decide which of the spectrums you want to go. The deeper you go of system of record, your moat continues to increase. Eventually, my guess would be Outreach will try to replace Salesforce. So within a few years, Outreach will position themselves as a CRM platform. Probably they already do, but they don't call it because they're working really well on top of HubSpot and Salesforce. But very soon, they're going to say, you don't need Salesforce. You need Outreach end-to-end. You have CRM.
Because anyways,
engagement.
Anyways, exactly. You're using Outreach to send out your system. Why not just keep it inside of Outreach?
Exactly. And so that's how you increase your moat. That's how you continue to differentiate. That's how you continue to displace existing tools, and your moat becomes stronger and stronger from a differentiation point of view also. So that's still on the product layer. There's another third element I'll talk about, and then we can open up even more. Because this is what I said. You can't just have one differentiation, one of those things. You have to buckle at least two of these to really come across strong. If you do three, if your market is differentiated, if you're able to tell your product story is also differentiated. And the third story I would say is the story of what you call is the go-to-market motion. Now, what the world is hearing, historical motions were top-down sales-led enterprise sales kind of motion. So outreach and Zoom info, you would see that it's a top-down motion. But you also mentioned Mailshake. Now, in some situations, Mailshake offers a product-led growth motion, or Apollo also was a product-led growth motion. So some buyers do not like to go through Zoom Info's buying process. So they will just choose Apollo because they made the buyer experience a lot seamless. The pricing was transparent. It was monthly pricing versus annual pricing. And they'll say, this is the pricing that I want, and I will go with that. Now, so you have to decide, is it a sales-led motion? Is it product-led motion? And sometimes you have to combine these two motions, and you can have a bimodal strategy as well. You can say, we're product-led for the SMB, but we're sales-led for the enterprise or mid-market customer. It's a product-led sales. It's a new category that you see more and more companies are adopting, is that experience. So customers, you will be able to differentiate customers purely based on the go-to-market motion as well. You're winning. We have this all the time. We see this. In our industry, most of the customers have these sales-led competitors. You have to schedule a demo, go through the 2 weeks of discovery calls, then barely you'll able to see the demo, then eventually you'll see the pricing. By that time, people are already setting with Avoma within 2 weeks, free trial, they can get started, and then they're set up. Once they're set up, they said, well, now I don't want to get off. Let's just continue with it. We have everything what you have. So you're winning purely based on the go-to-market strategy. Even though your product might be weaker, your market might be, to your point, the pricing might be lesser and this and that. But sometimes that go-to-market strategy also helps you win and differentiate compared to competitors.
Yeah, I mean, so it sounds like from the 3 layers, market, product led, go to market, if a CEO, co-founder, or a product person or a VC was listening to this, they'd say like, yeah, okay, so let's look at our company and where do we want to be established. Now, as a sales individual, they're not in really control of the market, product led, or go to market. They're relying on a company that decides which of the 3 layers they're going to pull. So as a salesperson, then how do they get on a call or how do they beat the competitor when they're like, the competitor is saying, prospect is saying, hey, I'm looking at, we'll use Avoma. I'm looking at Avoma, I'm looking at Gong, and I'm looking at Wingman. You know, you guys are all pretty much, similar. I'll say like how I said it, because when I was a VP of sales, I was evaluating Avoma and all that. And I said, well, everyone sort of does the same thing. I'm not really going to use all the fancy, I just need something to record the calls. I can listen back, provide feedback, provide notes. I know that Gong has more brand power, market share, whatever you want to call it. But you know, they all sort of do the same. So how do you guys compete? Like that's what's happening a lot on demos and discovery calls with salespeople. And they're like, well, and they go into this whole pitch.
Yeah. And so let's take this example. You came in inbound, let's say at that time. And when I look at you and or your business and your company, I'm saying, okay, they're SMB customer or they're mid-market customer. So that means that they're perfect. They have certain requirements. There are certain constraints that they have as a business. So I know typically pricing is a constraint. I know paying upfront contract would be a constraint. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to press those buttons throughout our conversation. I'm going to highlight you that when you go with other competitor, you are going to go through that. And may not be the pitch that would work for everyone. So if you would have been a mid-market, large enterprise kind of customers came in inbound or even outbound, I can't use that pitch because they don't care about those things. Then I have to rely on different elements. So it's not that there will be only one pitch, one silver bullet that would work. So you have the most important thing, understand who is in front of you, understand what they go through, what are the common challenges that they have, and then know that for these challenges, do I have strengths or am I weaker here or am I stronger here compared to my competitors? Then leverage that knowledge to expand. I can go into deeper. You also mentioned this is, let's say, the market-related differentiation I talked about, SMB, and I'm going to talk about that. Hey, I'm going to qualify you based on that, how you do procurement, how you purchase, are you open to annual versus you want to have monthly? Then I know I'm stronger here because Gong does not offer, let's say, monthly billing or monthly pricing. But then I'm also not going to rely only on that. Then I'm going to go and ask your workflow. How do you do coaching? Are you only looking for coaching for sales team? And you might say, yeah, that's all I need basic. I don't need fancy stuff. But then I'm going to educate you. Well, today you need, that's what you are as a VP of sales. You're starting today with your sales team's requirement. Have you thought about once the sales calls happen, what about your customer success team? What about your internal product and marketing team? What are they doing today to make their meeting efficient? And even you as a sales leader, when you're hiring, you're growing your team, what happens when you do interviews and are you recording those conversations? So I'm going to start educating you about the things, but Gong has taught you to look at from a sales coaching point of view. And this is what you need only to monitor your sales reps. I'm going to tell you that this is not about monitoring sales reps. I'm going to educate you that you can use this functionality to automate your workflows beyond the sales coaching. You do, as a sales leader, lots of different meetings, internal meetings, meetings with recruiters, potential candidates, and all of that stuff. So I'm going to start educating you that, hey, there's a value of this beyond just this call recording and intelligence for coaching. This actually automates my day-to-day workflow. It's going to make me more productive. It has the bells and whistles of what you need. May not be all, but then I'm also going to show you that Gong is ahead in some areas, but have you thought about Avoma is ahead in some of these other areas? So there is that differentiation of the product. That's what it's the system of intelligence. I'm going to start positioning Gong as more of a system of intelligence tool, and I'm going to position Avoma as more of a system of automation and system of workflow tool. So you start seeing the difference based on that. So and then lastly, I'm going to come to the go-to-market motion. I said, you can start the trial. We have free trial. Let's get started. There's no restriction. So we make the buyer experience friendlier for you. We don't charge you platform fee. We don't charge you customer success fee. And so somehow those things, overall experience is how you start winning. So you have to add these layers one at a time to start giving the experience to the buyer that, oh, now I get it. Overall marketing material, the buzz, everything is same, but now I feel, and then to be honest, one of the last thing I will tell you, a lot of the times buyers will still buy based on who they like. At the end of the day, it's a people business. If they feel that you have been valued and the way they do business and you're doing business with them the way they like to do business, they like it. So a lot of the times Avoma might be better in Gong in some areas, but some enterprise customers like to buy enterprise software. They would choose Gong because Gong is the number one brand. It's a market leader. They don't want to risk it with Avoma. Doesn't matter, we're affordable, featureful, functionally, got to give more value. They will not buy Avoma. And I have to accept that. I have to disqualify that. I have to not attach my outcome to every single thing. And so that's definitely that association happens. And these things evolve over the period. But I hope that helps you to see it's not one silver bullet, but when I combine these multiple stories, then people start getting, and that's the job of a salesperson, to educate your buyer, to think about the things, out teach them compared to your competitors. And that's basically how would I do it.
I mean, so there's a couple of things I picked up on. Number one, it's something that I do when I was VP of sales and when I consult for companies is a lot of times they have like their buyer persona built out somewhere in their playbook, but it's really not thought out. And so the first thing that I noticed you said was, well, first I need to identify who am I talking to, and then what's essentially the use case. So that's the buyer persona, and then within what I've created in the past is a buyer persona matrix that doesn't just include the age, the title, the role, but it also includes more personality traits like how do they like to buy, what do they dislike about purchasing, all these little different details for your different buyer personas. That's the first layer. The second layer is the buying scenario. Well, what's the use case? Are they coming from paper and pen? Are they coming from recording on Zoom? Like, where are they coming from? And what's the size of their business? Based on, you get a lead, whether it's inbound or outbound, job number one as the salesperson is to identify where do they fall within the buyer persona matrix, which means if they are a VP of sales for a prop tech company, well, how do they like to do business? And then based on that, identify, well, where are they in the buying scenario? Are they coming from a competitor? Because if that's the case, there's a certain FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt that comes with that. So you have to align your approach. And so that's the first layer that I'm sort of picking up here. My follow-up question to you, and it's potentially, I think, my last question because we're running out of time. Potentially, we'll see how this goes. But let's take, what's a company that comes to mind for you that you think it could be mistaken, unless you're working in that company, for a commoditized product? What's like a software specific? Because we know that Apollo offers some sequencing. So if you're using Apollo and ZoomInfo, then Apollo has that leg up. So what's one that's like people look at it, it's like, oh no, but they both offer the same thing. They both offer the same features. It's just more of usability and price.
Honestly, more, I would say this question is like, if I think about it, almost all the software is getting commoditized to a certain extent. If you think about it, like every SaaS vertical, SaaS platform you have so many more options. Like even in our industry, we have, this is funny, when we started fundraising back in 5 years, there were four competitors, players in the market. One Gong and Chorus on one extreme on sales. There was Otter and Voicea on the other
Mm-hmm.
end, horizontal market, right? And every investor at that time was like, "Oh, the market is over. We can't have more than four players. The space is over. It's already done." And today there are 20 providers, probably minimum. So every market is getting commoditized to some extent because the cost to build software, cost to get the software to the off market to the market is also has decreased. And so there are services that are being provided. So the time that we spend building these AI models and all of that stuff, the hard part, now people are offering those as a services. So new developers, new people are coming and building it very quickly. So at some point, and this was very interesting because last week I was on a customer visits. I was in New York meeting our customers in person, and they were actually shocked. They're like, "Why are you here? Are you here for investment?" I'm like, "No, we're here just to meet you. That's the whole and sole purpose." And that itself, and we met not just, and they were like, "But we are not big customers." And it doesn't matter. We don't look at you are big or small based on the revenue size. We want to understand what is important to you. So every customer, doesn't matter the size and the revenue that they were paying us. So they were surprised and they were very delighted. So at some point, the service experience is going to matter, the kind of experience that you would give to them. And they told us, and all these customers had evaluated Gong, had evaluated Chorus, had some kind of competitor, people who had used these products in the past and were champions of those products. And then we asked this question, hey, why are you still with us? What would happen with us? What is unique thing about Avoma that
Mm-hmm.
you're with us? And would you leave or not leave? And a lot of the times, the customer success experience, the buying experience, these elements played a big role in having they choose Avoma. So, and then the way I would say the software is going to get commoditized. Almost every product I can name you, they're commoditized. Like take this example of new category I mentioned, product-led sales. Now that category itself, 5 years ago, people were saying, "Well, we don't need this. That you pick what product-led or you pick product sales-led motion." Now there are 6, 7 vendors within a matter of 1 year. Which one do you use? It's very difficult. So
Yeah.
brand is going to help you. The experience that you provide is going to help you. So that, and when I say brand, it's not just, Gong does Super Bowl award, that means that's their brand. No, the way how their every employee communicates on LinkedIn, the knowledge that they share, that is their brand. And so that's what you have to think about from a competitor point of view. How are you differentiated from a brand point of view? If Gong is going to position as sales bro kind of a thing, I'm going to position more as a friendlier product-led company. So you have to pick the battles there, and that's how you would differentiate as well.
Yeah, I mean, there are two things that, and I'll leave sort of with this, but there are two things that I noticed based on your answer. Number one, I asked you a very particular question. Like, I essentially asked you, like, what would a prospect ask, right? Like, well, what makes you different? And your go-to move, I don't know if it was intentional or not, but you ended up telling me a story about a customer in New York that you went to visit, and you took me through, and I literally imagined you in Times Square, and like that's where my brain went. And so you told a story which sucked me in, and then you gave me the punchline, which is the differentiator. And so that's what I noticed you did. And on our few interactions, I've noticed you've done that. So I don't know if it's intentional or natural, but so for those listening, like, how do I outsell the competition when they're competing against, they're calling me out and our competitor? I would tell a story. I would say something like, it's a great question. Agree with them. Yeah, you're right. I can see why you think we're the same. And then tell a customer story that you've experienced. And then the punchline would be like what the customer said. That's number one that I noticed. The other thing that I noticed, at the end was man, I forgot the last part, but I think I'll just say with the other thought that popped into my head is interviewing your customer as to like so sales reps, what you should do is you should interview the customers that you've closed and they're still customers. Go back, call them
Yeah,
up, say like, hey, I love that you're still with us. How's everything going well? I mean, something I would recommend doing for every salesperson before you
correct.
do that. Check if there's any open tickets. If there is, then don't do it. If there isn't any open tickets and their NPS score is great, they're satisfied with you, then call them and then ask them like, hey, can I ask you candidly, you're still with us. We love you as customers. Why are you still with us? I know there's other, and I don't think it's planting a seed in their head that's saying, you know what, maybe I'll switch over. I think it shows vulnerability, which shows confidence. But those are two last things I sort of picked up on.
You are 100% right. That was intentional. Story was important. I don't think nowadays you would not win just based on the features.
Right.
Yes, some in that 30 minutes conversation, 20-minute conversation, you want to talk about certain features. You want to have a wow moment. Few things in Avoma. So when I say system of workflow, it's not just you're going to say that to customers that, oh, we are a system of workflow. You have to back it up by feature. What do you mean by that? So when we used to show against Gong, we used to show people that, well, how do you take notes today? How your reps are taking notes today? If you have all the call recording, coaching, and everything, then they say, well, they go back and listen to the Gong calls and take notes in Google Doc or Salesforce. And that used to be our aha moment. So what if we automate that part? These are the two pieces of the same coin. You're doing all the call recording and coaching on one side, but what you also automate the notes and get these notes saved into CRM automatically at the field level. And they were like, holy shit, can you do that? And then we would show it. So that's how we would say that workflow means that we are automating your note-taking workflow along with this coaching workflows. And so when you give that differentiation in the product along with the other things, that's how you have to win.
Yeah.
So that's in the end, yes, stories matter, features matter, but stories stuck, features don't stuck with you.
Yeah, and the last thing that I just remembered what it was is you were talking about and salespeople should like post on LinkedIn. So yeah, there are a few people on LinkedIn that I noticed that they post a lot, and they post maybe about prospecting, or they post about secure, whatever. They do a really good job of posting about whatever topic they're passionate about. That also links back. So if you're a salesperson and your buyer hangs out on LinkedIn, and a lot of salespeople here, they sell to CMOs, whatever it is. Talk about marketing from a make it entertaining. Use hooks. I know this is not. I'm not trying to go tactically here too much because that's another episode. But use your LinkedIn to build a brand for yourself, and at the back of your brand, you're also probably generating leads. You know who does this really well, by the way? Jed Marley. He was on my podcast. He talks about prospecting, but he works at Mailshake. He's outbound for Mailshake.
Yeah.
So.
And that is exactly the last point. The brand, people think Super Bowl ads is not brand. That's one part of it. That's paid brand. But there's a lot of earned brand that you as a company, as an individual can do. Salesperson, founders, leaders, everyone. I'm doing on LinkedIn, pushing. You have seen my content. I try to push it all the time. And it's a work. It's an effort. I have a calendar block on my calendar that posts on LinkedIn. And you have to do that. You have to build your brand. You have to come across authority. People like seeing what your thoughts are, their point of view. And that's what in the end people are going to buy from you.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Well, we're out of time. We went over by 7 minutes. Is there, you can plug yourself in. Where can people find you?
It's Avoma.com. Fun fact, it stands for a very organized meeting assistant. So it's a very easy to remember, Avoma.com. And my first name, Aditya, Aditya, at Avoma.com. I'm always on LinkedIn, very active and sharing and learning from a lot of sales leaders and salespeople. So sales is my passion. So connect with me.
Sounds good. Appreciate it.